It's no secret that Bloodborne is probably my favorite game of all time. And I mean, maybe you don't really watch my content like that, but now you know. Bloodborne is my favorite game of all time. I vividly remember getting home from school after a long day of middle school. Things were pretty tough back, man. Like I had to read for homework. I was doing geometry. Life had not been any worse. I was bored out of my mind. I needed a new game to play. I needed something to break up that monotony in my life. I'd been playing League of Legends, Smite, and CSGO almost exclusively for the past year. I needed something new, something refreshing, and after looking through the spare money I had laying around, I decided I was going to go out and buy myself a brand new game. Initially, I had no idea what I was really going to buy. I was watching some YouTube videos, and some of my favorite content creators at the time all seemed to be playing this new game called Bloodborne. And for whatever reason, without looking at reviews, anything like that, I decided, yeah, I'm going to buy this. So when my mom got home from work, I said, Mom, I want to go to GameStop. And I think she was kind of upset because it was a Friday night and she probably wanted to relax, but my mom was kind of chill like that, so she made sure I actually had the money to buy the game, and off we went. Pull up to the GameStop, I go straight to the PlayStation section, slap that bad boy on the counter, and no, I am not a power-up rewards member, and then I had my mom buy it because it was rated M and I was like 13 years old. And they were really trying to convince her not to buy that shit too. They said, Ma'am, are you aware this game has heavy amounts of violence and themes that might not be suitable for young audiences? This guy was my new mortal enemy. What the hell was he trying to do? Sabotage my gaming? But after a while of begging, mission was accomplished. So I hopped back in my mom's car and we started driving back home as I took off the wrapper and vigorously read the back of the game's case. Once I got home, ate some dinner, I popped that bad boy into my PS4 ever so patiently, waiting for an update, and launched that puppy. First thing I did was make the most disgusting abomination I could imagine with the game's sliders, and then I loaded into that bad boy, only to find out that, wow, this game is hard. Really, really hard. And I didn't really get it at first. I would get through some of the enemies of Yharnam, and then I'd die to those wolves that were kind of at the top of the stairs, and then start the whole thing all over again with all the enemies having respawned. You see, I'd never played a Dark Soul. I did not understand where the software was from. Why were the enemies respawning? What exactly was going on here? And when I finally did get to the first boss, the Cleric beast, I think I died at least like 30 times, probably more. And with that first few hours of gaming, I gave up for the night and I went to bed, slightly disappointed. The game was not what I was expecting it to be. I'm not exactly sure what I was expecting, but this was tough. But the next day was Saturday, so I had some time to do whatever I wanted, and so I ate some cereal, I went back downstairs to boot up my PlayStation. Maybe this time things would be different. And so I kept banging my head against the metaphorical wall that was the Cleric beast, dying again and again, running out of blood vials a lot, and then dying again and again, until finally, with my hands sweating out more liquid than Arizona gets in a year, I had done it. I had beaten the Cleric beast. I had never felt more accomplished in my life, and it was at that moment I finally got it. I understood now. The next month would be spent with me working my way through the game. I was, quite frankly, terrible. I had no idea what I was doing, I was extremely underleveled, and I was just really, really bad. But eventually, with the help of Ludwig's Holy Blade, I finally got to him. Gehrman the First Hunter. And after a while of me relentlessly dying over and over again, I had done it. Bloodborne was beaten. Or at least I thought it was until a giant alien came from the sky and abducted me, and upon Googling to see what had happened, I realized that there was actually more than one ending. And so, I was back on that grind. I rolled a new character, ended up reading a giant breakdown of the entirety of the lore someone had written up on Google Docs. I discovered Vidya, and just like that, Bloodborne had become my new favorite game. And later that year when the Old Hunters DLC was revealed, you bet your ass I was freaking the fuck out with all the new content. I bought that puppy day one. Perfect timing for me actually, since it lined up with Thanksgiving break. So I grinded that thing non-stop all weekend. Amazing expansion, one of the best from FromSoft easily. And like a lot of single player games, you would assume that would be kind of the end of things, except it was not. Now, Bloodborne had some issues. Is it still one of my favorite games of all time? No doubt. But, the blood vials being consumable, that was a little annoying. But most glaringly of all was one, or actually two things that were a hiccup for most people. One being the game's performance, and two, kind of tied to that, is that the game was exclusively for the PS4. Now, as great as the gameplay of Bloodborne was, the game did not run super well. The PS4's hardware was fairly limiting, which resulted in Bloodborne being forcibly capped at 30 FPS, leading to a choppy experience that would pretty frequently fall below this already less than ideal frame rate. And this wouldn't have mattered as much if the game wasn't a PlayStation exclusive, but similar to Demon's Souls, Bloodborne was also made in collaboration with Japan Studio, a development studio owned by Sony. And for this reason, much like Demon's Souls, Bloodborne would be published exclusively for PlayStation, to the disappointment of many fans. But that's how things had to be, I guess. Despite this, Bloodborne would eventually go on to be the 12th highest sold game on the PS4, selling over 7 million units. Universally praised by fans, despite the performance issues it did have. Over the years since it was released, many people had hoped for news regarding Bloodborne. As for many people up until the release of Elden Ring, it was was regarded as From Software's best game. Shit, I remember people thinking that the Sekiro teaser was a Bloodborne sequel. I remember people hoping that the PS4 Pro would come with a 60 FPS patch for the game. And of course, I remember people hoping that the PS5 would come with a 60 FPS patch for the game, much to the disappointment of fans. With how much Bloodborne was hyped over the years, the demand for a sequel, or at the very least a 60 FPS patch, or a remaster, or anything was palpable. People just wanted to get their hands on the thing and be able to experience the game without any arbitrary hardware limitations. The release of the incredibly well-done Demon's Souls remaster in 2020 only gave people more hope that a Bloodborne remaster was possible. But only a few months later, in April of 2021, Japan Studio, the studio played an often understated yet pivotal role in the creation of Bloodborne, was shut down by Sony due to a lack of profitability. And with that, it really did feel like an end to the chances of at the very least a sequel ever happening, and possibly really anything related to Bloodborne. The original team was gone, and From Software was focusing on other upcoming projects. It was not looking too hot. But this would not stop the fans. Every single goddamn Game Awards or Game Reveal show, people would somehow find a way to almost guarantee that a remaster for Bloodborne would be revealed. And time after time, we've been met with silence and disappointment. So much so that fans got tired of waiting for Sony and made their own 60 FPS mods for the game for both PS4 and PS5, as well as developed an extremely impressive ROM PC port for the game that runs at 60 FPS. To be fair, I think a lot of this was done before the closure of Japan Studio from what I understand, but the ROM, that one was a bit more recent. But still, fans have continued to beg PlayStation for a port of the game, just hoping to get some sort of official support so it can be enjoyed by a wider audience. Even now, and this is partially my reason for making the video, new speculation has begun after a DMCA takedown notice was filed by Sony against the original modder who created the 60 FPS patch for the game, resulting in him having to take down any links he had posted for the mod. And so I guess the question is, did Sony do this because they're working on a remake? Probably not. Bloodborne is a damn near masterpiece in my eyes. The game's world building is incredible. Visually, it's just incredible to look at as well. The bosses are mostly very memorable. The combat outside of the frame rate issues is fluid and methodical. The limited amount of trick weapons in the game all provide their own, sometimes small and other times huge differences in gameplay that allows for an incredibly large amount of replayability. It's tense, it's fun, and most of all, I think it's a game that almost everyone should at least give a shot at playing. But all that being said, I just think we're unlikely to see a remaster for a long time, if ever. Many of these game publishers or corporations seem to have an absolute stranglehold on their IPs, and Sony, as one of the largest publishers in the industry, is not any different. Even if they're DMCA and things, I really don't think that means they're working on anything new for the game. And trust me, I want to be wrong, but unfortunately, I just don't think I am. With Japan Studio gone and From Software seemingly looking to move on to other projects outside of the Souls formula, or at least I thought that's what they were doing until we got this, it really doesn't feel like a sequel for the game will ever really come to fruition. So our best bet lies in a remake or a port for the game, which unfortunately, Sony holds the rights to the game, so it's exclusively their decision at the end of the day. Hidetaka Miyazaki, president and the main front-facing figure of From Software, has seemingly expressed some interest in having it ported, but honestly, I don't really think that Miyazaki is the one holding things up. The Demon's Souls remake still has yet to be ported over to PC 4 years after its release, despite Sony's greater initiative in porting games to the platform, with leakers previously stating that it would never come to PC. So what is the issue? Why are the Sony exclusive From Software games still limited from being ported to PC? And you know, it's really tough to say. It seems like no one really knows besides Sony. There's obviously a lot of effort that goes into porting games between systems with different operating systems, but I mean, like, we've already got an unofficial port with the Shad PS4 ROM, so it can't be that tough for Sony, right? With the amount of hype that surrounds some sort of remake for the game, it's hard to understand the downside for Sony here. And after the disastrous release of Concord, it feels like Sony needs at least some sort of win to at least squeeze back some of the revenue they lost. So overall, what is the best chance we've got? Honestly, I think that a Bloodborne PC port will be almost entirely out of the question until we at the very least get Bluepoint's Demon's Souls Remastered ported over to PC as well. More than anything, I think that if Sony recognizes the opportunity to cash in on this hype, they'd probably make a whole remake instead of just a simple patch to make the game 60 FPS, incentivizing people to actually buy a newer version of the game instead of just enabling 60 FPS with an older version. Even if they did this though, I'd imagine that it'd still stay exclusive to console, at the very least based on Sony's track record. And after the rough launch of the PS5 and Sony seemingly gearing up for the next generation of consoles, I think our best bet for a remaster would probably be on the PlayStation 6, but even then, I'm just not sure. Sony's reluctance to remaster, patch, or port Bloodborne despite its success and universal praise is one of the greatest mysteries in the industry. Although I think we can speculate on some sort of logical reasoning as to why they wouldn't want to touch the game, it more than anything seems like a personal choice made by the company. But I, along with many others, hope that eventually, whatever is causing Sony to hold off on pursuing any sort of care for the game almost 10 years now after its release, is eventually resolved so that old fans and people who never got the chance to enjoy the original can experience the great things this game has to offer. Thank you all for watching this month's video. Sorry this is a bit shorter than usual. I'm working on hopefully something a bit larger for next month. Life has been a bit all over the place lately, so it's been hard to prioritize YouTube, unfortunately. Hopefully next month's video will be a bit longer though, a bit meatier for sure. Special thanks of course to this month's patrons. Mads, Dave the Unknown, Griff, Einar Anderson, Turmeric, Maddie Grady, Zarl Dunking, Kenny, Daddy Yam, Bup1, and Oliver. I appreciate you all so much for your support, and of course, thank you all again for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.